Welcome to Common Mistakes to Avoid, recognizing pitfalls before they sabotage your success. As always, we need to talk about why this is important. Here's the thing, when you are unknowingly repeating common errors, this leads to so much frustration, inefficiency, and poor results, which can lead to burnout, wasted time, and wasted money. So, by recognizing these pitfalls ahead of time, you can really approach your studies with a much better strategy and avoid a lot of unnecessary stress. And by knowing what to avoid, this is just honestly just as important as knowing how to study effectively because you don't want these mistakes getting in your way. Now, here's the thing for those of you who are listening to this and you are repeat test takers, or maybe you've been trying to study for a long time and you haven't been able to get like a really solid strategy. First, you need to forgive yourself, okay? As the old saying goes, we know when we know better, we do better, right? So, it's natural to encounter errors during this exam preparation process, especially when you're left with little support. And so, you have to be compassionate to yourself and forgive yourself for any mistakes that I mentioned today that you realize that you have made. Remember to focus on growth, not guilt and beating yourself up. Recognize that these mishaps were just a part of your journey of learning, and we've got to move on and not get stuck in a place of guilt or shame because sometimes after people hear this recording, they start kind of being really down on themselves. But I don't want you to go to that dark place. I want you to, yes, you're going to feel maybe some feelings as you start to realize, oh man, maybe that's what was getting in the way. But at the same time, I hope that it helps you to feel empowered to move forward, with a clear sense of how to do this whole thing. And of course, it's important to embrace, self compassion and remember that the kinder you are to yourself, it's going to help you to get back into this journey and feel motivated so that you can really springboard into action and use this new awareness to set yourself out up on a, better path. All right. So, of course, we've always got to start with the mindset part because it's always the most important. So, sometimes people weren't ready to study because, again, life transitions, challenges, too much was going on. They weren't in the right headspace. Their life wasn't ready. I won't go into too much detail about that because we already spent quite a bit of time in our other session. Also, sometimes anxiety taking over and not having all of the right supports like therapy and medication to help ourselves. And so it just takes over and totally psychs a person out on test day and makes the whole entire study journey really difficult. Furthermore, burnout. And I have that highlighted because it's such a common thing. And so many people are dealing with it. They've cut out all of the joy in their life. They're overworked. They maybe went a little obsessive with the studying, or they were just burnt out from other life things and weren't able to study effectively, but they still pushed through and did it anyway. And then it led to negative results. And by the way, before I continue, please know that I, spent a few years of coaching putting this list together, like literally just hearing people's stories. And I started to notice the same kind of trends over and over again. And that is what led to all the talking points in this session tonight, was just literally talking to tons of people about their experience. And so let's keep going. A lot of people take the test before they're ready, they're under pressure to keep a visa, to keep a job, to keep their ability to practice in their state. And so they're pushing through to take the test. Sometimes test scores are 10, 20% lower, sometimes even lower than that of what they need, of the target percentage, and they're still taking the test anyway. And a lot of times when I ask people, like, what was going on? Like, let's say they needed a 70% for the type of test they're taking, but their test scores were like in the mid to low 50s. And I'll be like, okay, so what do you think was going on that made you take it? And a lot of times they were just so exhausted with the whole process. They were just like, well, I just can't take it anymore. I just want it to be done. And so they're just going in there literally on like a hope and a prayer. Or maybe they heard a random story of someone else who passed with really low practice test scores. So they're like, well, maybe I can do it. Literally, they get into such, that dark place of exhaustion, fatigue, frustration, whatever it is, that they just really stop thinking clearly.